Hi, in this video we're going to go over a few of the features that you can use to customize the general look of your application, your new application. We're going to go into some more specifics of how to customize forms and lists, but in this video we're just going to be talking about things like the colors, the logo, and the general look and feel of your application. Okay, so let's get started. You want to go straight to your application record. Now, if we switch over to the application, we'll see that by default it gives you this kind of purplish blue color at the top here, which may not be to everyone's liking. So it's very easy to change that color to anything that you like. You just go back to your application, you click Edit on the application record. You can click on the colors section of that form here, and you'll see it gives you 3 different colors that you can choose. The main color is basically the color of the area underneath the tabs, so this whole area about here. The top color is basically the tabs and what's above that. It derives both of those colors from the main color, from the top color that you specify here. The button color just refers to the color of the action buttons that you get in Workflow. By default, we show that as a kind of orange color that you can see here to make it stand out from everything else. If you don't like that, then you can just make it gray quite easily. So we're going to just change the top color. We click the ellipsis button to bring up this selector, and we're going to change a different color. Let's make it a shade of green instead. Maybe that color there. So the top color now is going to be green. The main color is still a kind of gray. We'll leave that for now. And the button color is an orange. So let's click Update, and we'll publish that. And we just had to press F5 to refresh our application. And now it shows up with a green color at the top. So it's that easy to change the color of your application. And of course that changes in every single page throughout your application as you navigate. Okay, so that's just changing the main colors of the application. Another thing that you'd of course want to do is to change what it says at the top here. Now you may think that's just the name of your application, but the title of your application, the logo text that appears up here, can actually be something different from the name of your application. So we can put anything in there. I mean, you may want it to be shorter. Perhaps your application is called Loan Administration Manager or something like that, and you just want to call it LAM instead at the top here. That's how you would. That's why you'd want to have a different text up here than just the name of the application. But you can change those. If we click Edit on the application configuration record, we can see there's a name here. There's also a title, which is what actually shows at the top in the tab, and the logo text. So for the logo text, we're just going to call it Demo instead. So let's just publish that and refresh, and now it just says Demo exclamation mark at the top. So you can change that to anything that you like. Now you may not, of course, want it to be text. You may want to incorporate some kind of logo, company logo, perhaps an application logo that you've designed. You can do that too. You want to make sure that your image that you're uploading is about 100 pixels or less in height, and that it's a PNG with a transparent background. It needs to be a transparent background so that it merges in with the gradient that you see here without sticking out too much. It doesn't matter if it's not transparent background, but it definitely looks better if it is. So to put that in, we click Edit, go to Other Application Settings, and click on the logo file right here. And we're going to put, we have demo logo that I created earlier. Click Update. Now let's publish that. You notice that sometimes when I publish, I click Patch Yes. That's just to tell it that what you're updating is just a small change and doesn't affect the database. It actually starts up a little bit quicker if you do that. Now we have the logo in there, but we also have our logo text, and we probably don't want to have both of those in there. So we're going to get rid of the logo text and publish again. and we will refresh, and now we just have our logo at the top. So you can see how we can customize the top portion in terms of the colors very easily. We can put in our own company logo. We can change the colors maybe to be similar to the colors in the logo if that's what you need to do. There's quite a lot of flexibility just in that alone, and it's very quick. Okay, that's one thing you can do. Let's also look at some other things. Some other things include, we can also change, for example, the font size of the application. By default, it gives you a specific font size. I think it's font size 11, maybe 10. And you can make it something much larger if you want to. If your application is for specific type of people who prefer larger fonts to make it appear easier to navigate, then you can do that. So to change the font size, you're going to want to create an advanced record underneath the application. So to do that, when you're on the application, you click the ellipsis right here, and then you click on Advanced, which is right here. Click plus, and there's a few more options in here that you may be interested in. We're not going to go over all of them in detail now, but you can change, for example, whether or not it has spreadsheet actions in the What's Next list, or XML actions for importing XML and exporting XML. You can also change the fave icon, which is actually the icon that appears at the top in the tab. So if you have a small version of your icon, of your logo, you can actually put that in there and it will show up at the top, just like we have here for WorkflowFirst. There are some other options about whether we allow users to make themselves power users. If you don't want them to do that, you put no. There are homepage links and a few other things. But the two things that we're going to look at right now is the override width, which actually lets you override the overall width of the application. You see right now it's set to about 990 pixels. You may want that to be larger because perhaps all of your employees have large screens. So perhaps you can make it more like 1200 or something like that. You can change that right there. And the default font size. So if the default font size, let's say we make it font size 14. Let's just see what effect that actually has. That might be too large. And there you go. Much larger font. Probably too large for what you'd want. It could also be that you want to make it a smaller font size because you have a lot more, you want to cram a lot more information, because of course when you increase the font size or decrease the font size, it changes how much information you can really fit into a list on the screen. So let's try changing it to, say, font size 9. And let's refresh that. Font size 9 isn't too bad. It's definitely a little smaller than what we normally have. We're just going to try font size 7 just to see how ridiculously small it can get. And now we're on font size 7, which is much smaller, probably a little too small to read for a lot of people. Okay, let's put it back. We can just take out the font size completely and it would override it back. Sorry, it'll put it back to the default, which I think is font size 11. Another option we'll look at in another video is to set the general horizontal fields for your application. What this refers to is when you click on a form, we normally have 4 columns in a form. You don't have to have 4, you can have 5, 6, however many you like. That allows you to override it for the whole application, and you can also override it on a particular form basis as well. Lastly, here we have banner content. You can put date and time. This refers to what we see up here, or you don't even have it in this application, but normally you'd have the description of the application up here. You can replace that with the date and time. Some people like to have the date and time very visible, especially if the work that they do is very time sensitive. So that allows you to put the date and time up there. App links simply refers to the links that we see up here. You see WorkflowFirst has some additional ones like a link to the user guide and discussion. You can add additional links in there too, just by putting in some text in here with links. Perhaps you have a company website that you want to link to. That's how you would do it. So let's put this back to the default. Okay, now one other thing that I want to mention is the ability to hide certain tabs. Now the proper way to hide tabs is really to use security and permissions, and we'll go into that in another video. Basically, if someone doesn't have permission to view a particular type or particular tab, then it won't show up in this list of tabs. That's one way of doing it. Another way to do it is actually to set the tab to be admin only. So we're going to show doing that because it's a very easy way of doing it. So we click on standing data, which is the configuration tab. If we go to flags down here, then we can add the flag called admin only. Now of course this only works if you're not logged in as an admin, so we'll also have to create a user that we can log in as. So let me just patch that. So I already have a user called test. So right now I have it, so I'll click sign out. And when we log in as test, now we see that we no longer see the configuration tab at the top. We just see users and tickets. And that's because we set it as admin only, and the test user is not actually an admin. So that is one way to actually restrict, access to particular tabs. It's not a very good way because they technically still have access to that tab through scripting, etc. They just don't have the button up here to actually click on it, or the tab up here to click on it and see it. Now you wouldn't necessarily want to do that for the users tab, because the users tab is where they would normally update their password, for example. So unless you're providing a different way for them to update their password, you shouldn't really get rid of the users tab. Of course, you could provide a little action and add that to your tickets tab, perhaps available in the What's Next list that lets them update their password. You can do that with a little bit of scripting, but if you don't do that, then of course you wouldn't want to. Okay, so those are a few ways that we can actually customize the general look of the application. Of course, you can go much further than that. You can also completely change the styles. Of course, this is an HTML application, and we use CSS extensively. There are several CSS files that you can override, and also everything is HTML template based. So there are HTML files that you can change to completely change the look. You do this basically by using the skins area. If you go into your application and you drill down into the skins link, click plus on there. You can basically select files to override different templates, and there are CSS files that you can override using the additional files option down here. Have a look at the files in the files folder of your application, and you'll see a number of CSS files in there and things that you can change. This is where you'd basically override it, and that would allow you to change the look of the application completely if you so wish. That's one way of actually changing the look. You can also do something called use web mode. Web mode is actually where you're completely replacing the user interface with your own HTML. But it's still, underneath it, it's still going to be a WorkflowFirst application. A good example of that is actually our support website. If I click on user guide here, you'll see it. This is actually a WorkflowFirst application in web mode. So it's showing, it's using WorkflowFirst as a database, as a server, but the front end files, the HTML on the front end, is completely customized. And it is an integrated script HTML, so the script is actually inside the HTML, and it will work to generate this application, the whole application, and what you see in the browser right now. So that's kind of an advanced option, and something that maybe you can consider after you've finished creating your application. Obviously, it opens up a whole load of more opportunities for creating different types of applications, maybe even games. But for most people, the interface that WorkflowFirst generates is sufficient because it gives you a lot of flexibility. Okay, in the next few videos we'll be talking about other areas of customization. Thank you.